Thank you guys for being here. So the event is officially listed for 2 hours. I've timed this and it's only 45 minutes. So you can look at this as 45 minutes is a long time, or you can look at it as it's a lot less than 2 hours. And so that'll be your choice tonight. I will say just a personal word about the museum. So I'm someone from the South who had never been to York's campus before coming here to interview in May. And I didn't know much about York when I came to visit, and one of the most impressive things that I saw while I was here was the museum. It really impressed me as an outsider. I didn't know it was here. I had never heard of it, and when I walked through, I thought, wow, this is incredible. And already I've taken 2 of my classes, and we've had class in there because it's just such an invaluable teaching tool, and it's incredible. I did inherit the appraisal guide that was done by the official company for the museum, and there are hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of artifacts in that museum. Today I flipped back through it to see what our coin collection was ahead of this, and there's a single artifact in there that's valued over $250,000, and so many of the other artifacts are valued several $1,000s. It really is an unbelievable collection that we get the benefit of having here in York, Nebraska. And so I hope that you don't take that for granted and that you appreciate it, because it really is a blessing. All right, so what I'm going to do is share with you some research about how I believe ancient Roman coins help us read the book of Revelation. Revelation is frequently regarded as the most difficult book to understand in the New Testament, perhaps even in the entire Bible. In this book, Jesus is pictured as having a sharp sword protruding from his mouth. There are 4 living creatures with the appearance of a lion, ox, human, and eagle, all having eyes all over them in front and back and 6 wings. There are 4 death-dealing horsemen, a child-eating dragon, 2 hideous beasts, and a description of a new Jerusalem with walls 1,400 miles high. Revelation is certainly not light reading. There are plagues, battles, horse-looking locusts with scorpion tails, burning bodies, corpse-eating birds, and blood, lots of blood. With all of these otherworldly images, can we feel confident that our reading of Revelation is responsible, that it's true to the meaning intended by the author of the book, and it's true to the way the book would have been received when it was heard in the second half of the 1st century AD? That is the task of biblical interpretation. Revelation was not written to us. It was written to 7 churches in the Roman province of Asia Minor in the second half of the 1st century AD. This is where many interpreters have stumbled in recent decades, reading Revelation as if it were a code book of predictions regarding future events, almost exclusively read as predictions about the United States of America and her geopolitical foes. Although these American-centric readings have dominated popular evangelicalism in the United States, they fail to understand Revelation as a message contextualized for its 1st century audience. And those readings will always leave us left behind in understanding the book's message. See what I did there? All right. As a first principle in interpreting biblical text, instead of asking how Revelation relates to the major news headlines of our own day, we seek to understand how Revelation's vision addresses its primary audience in the 7 congregations in 7 cities in the Roman province of Asia Minor. The book is designed so that the first thing John experiences and shares with his audiences is an incredible and terrifying vision of the risen Christ in 1:12 through 20. It is this risen and exalted Lord that addresses the 7 congregations in Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. And I should add that the order that they appear in Revelation is the order in which they would have been delivered and read to the churches. The 7 oracles to the congregations in chapters 2 and 3 are key in determining the real issues which the vision of the rest of the book addresses. Craig Kester rightly points to 3 main issues facing the audiences of Revelation. First, these believers experienced various levels of hostility with outsiders. Most of the hostility was informal, local, and sporadic, consisting of slander and social ostracization. Yet we do learn that some Christians were being imprisoned, and one otherwise unknown Christian from Pergamum named Antipas was martyred for his faithful witness to Jesus in 2:13. Second, the audience was experiencing complacency in their faith. These Christians were apparently too comfortable in the prospering province of Asia Minor, which fits the economic picture of the cities from the second half of the 1st century AD. Jesus even quotes the Laodicean Christians as boasting, "I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing." Third, these churches were tempted to assimilate to Greco-Roman religious practices. John challenges the teachings of 3 false teachers, Nicholas, Jezebel, and Balaam, who he accuses of encouraging idolatry and sexual immorality in these churches. Revelation's visionary strategy seeks to wake these churches from their comfortable slumber and accommodation to the surrounding culture by pulling back the curtain to show the truth about the world in which they live in order to call them to deeper worship and witness. That the vision of chapters 4 through 22 seeks to accomplish this purpose is certain, but what's less certain is how certain individual passages contribute to that strategy. And I always point this out whenever I'm teaching on Revelation. A lot of people think Revelation is a really irrelevant book. I think this is one of the most relevant books for our current time, right? I will argue tonight that one important and oft neglected source for helping us read the book of Revelation is money, money, money. This oversight in scholarship on the book is curious, especially due to 3 factors. First, the effect we know coins had on 1st century world. Second, what we know about coin production in Asia Minor. And third, the evidence from within the book itself. First, we know that unlike today, the images on coins impacted 1st century society. Several scholars have studied the changing hairstyles of women in the 1st century, and they found that as the hairstyles of prominent women like Augustus's wife Livia and Domitian's wife Domitia were pictured on coins with different coiffures, there is also a marked change in women's hairstyles on statues and other representations, suggesting that coins had a major impact on women's fashion. Paul Zanker has demonstrated that the imagery which appeared on coins makes its way into private Roman life, such as on jewelry and utensils, furniture, textiles, walls and stuccoed ceilings, door jambs, clay facings, roof tiles, and even on tomb monuments and marble ash urns. This implies that people did not only notice what was on coinage, but they were demonstrably influenced by them in their personal lives, explicitly through response and implicitly through culture adaptation. Second, in the 1st century, Asia Minor had a flourishing economy, and Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Sardis, and Laodicea were among the largest and most prosperous cities in the province. In response to the rising economy, there was a corresponding rise in the production of silver coins under the emperors Vespasian and Titus. Ephesus, Pergamum, and Smyrna were the most prolific coin producers in Asia Minor, with Laodicea, Thyatira, Philadelphia, and Sardis sharing significantly in that activity. And third, money and commerce is a significant target of John's vision. The risen Christ refers to the financial situation of several of the congregations in the oracles in chapters 2 and 3. Revelation 13 exhorts readers not to receive the mark of the beast, which has to do with buying and selling in the marketplace. Revelation 18 contains an extended critique of Rome's exploitative economy, including a list of 28 luxury goods shipped across the empire, culminating in bodies and human souls, a reference to the Roman slave trade. Revelation 6:6 twice mentions a denarius, a common silver Roman coin used for daily wage for workers. The text of Revelation itself invites us to consider how its vision may be interacting with the politics, ideology, and propaganda of money. Thus, coins were impactful, coins were plentiful in these cities, and Revelation itself not only mentions a Roman denarius twice, but also takes up the theme of Roman wealth and imperial commercialism in great detail. I suggest tonight that there are 3 ways that ancient coins help us better understand Revelation's message. First, coins demonstrate that the first century world was full of messages communicated through images. Every coin includes 2 elements: inscriptions, which are also called legends, and images or symbols. Since most of the population was illiterate or semi-literate, the symbols and images on coins were the primary vehicle for communication. Coins remind us that what might be confusing, strange, and foreign imagery to us in the book of Revelation was very much at home in its first century world. I'm just going to give just a few examples. First, the use of animals to symbolize individuals, religions, and deities. Here are a number of coins that we could multiply many times over. This is the myth of Rome's beginning with the she-wolf and Romulus and Remus. Eagle being a major sign of Roman power, military might. Elephants, cows frequently picture here. So the image of a beast or the image of living creatures that's like an ox, a lion, and having a human face, this would not have been unusual in this world. Images of grotesque beasts. You see on many coins a Capricorn, because this was the astronomical sign of Augustus and his birth. You see a sphinx, and so the image of beasts with multiple characteristics of lion and wings and things like this, these would not have been unusual in the first century world. Religious paraphernalia such as altars, censers, and offerings. This is an altar to Augustus. This is the god Apollo pictured here as making an offering, holding a patera, making some kind of libation on a firelit altar with a harp, holding a harp here. Crowns and thrones, and mounted soldiers. So think about the 4 horsemen. Thus, at the most basic level, coins remind us that the apocalyptic symbolism of the book of Revelation was very much at home in the visual world of the first century, which relied heavily on images to communicate. Perhaps you may have been tempted to ask whether we might not be able to do without all the confusing images in this book in our Bible, but coins help us to realize that not all people are like us. And apocalyptic images in the book of Revelation were not only relevant, but necessary to effectively communicate to these 7 congregations. Brief reflection reminds us that even in our own day, certain images are encoded with significant and polarizing political meaning. Just seeing these images without any context can arouse strong feelings of patriotism or disdain. Numismatics, or the study of ancient coins, helps us see the images which were common in the world of Revelation's audience 2,000 years ago, thus making us more informed interpreters of the book. Second, Revelation addresses imperial ideology, and the images on coins were a primary means the empire used to influence its citizens with imperial propaganda. There are 3 types of images which appear on almost every provincial Roman coin. 1, pagan gods, 2, human portraits, and 3, Roman temples. First, about 84% of the denarius reverse types minted between 69 and 235 AD pictured the gods or their personifications. While many coins featured gods from the pantheon of gods, such as Zeus, Athena, Artemis, Jupiter, Hermes, or Nike, etc., many coins also contained personifications of gods such as liberalitas, generosity, or pietas, religiosity, or securitas, security, concordia, agreement, or fortuna, fortune. Second, while very few coins from the first century Roman Empire lacked a human portrait, of note is that no Roman coin minted prior to 44 BC had ever contained the image of a living person. The reason for this drastic difference between coins minted during the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire was the rise of the worship of the Roman emperor, referred to as the imperial cult. The dominant face appearing on most coins was that of the Caesar, pictured in the style of the glorious Alexander the Great. And third, many coins minted in Asia featured Roman temples. The Emperor Domitian minted 16 coin types, and 6 of those, or 40%, featured imperial temples on the reverse. The imperial cult was a central facet of identity in Asia Minor. The first provincial imperial cult temple in Asia was established in Pergamum in 29 BC. Let me just say really quickly, to receive a provincial imperial cult temple, you have to receive approval from the Roman Senate, and the Romans are paying for staffing and the ongoing work of these imperial temples through tax dollars. This is a big deal to receive an imperial cult temple. And the first city to receive an imperial cult temple outside of Rome is the city of Pergamum in 29 BC. Thus, when Revelation is written, he's writing to the heart of emperor worship outside of Rome, and he's writing to people who have had decades of experience of being the center of emperor worship outside of Rome, if that helps some. But we can add to this. During the reign of Tiberius in 23 AD, a second provincial imperial cult temple was granted to Asia Minor. What they did was they had a contest to see which city in Asia would win out for the honor of having this second provincial imperial cult temple. 11 cities vied for the privilege, including 5 of the 7 cities addressed in Revelation. But Smyrna was chosen for that honor. Does that sound familiar? Ephesus was granted the third imperial temple in Asia Minor, and it was granted, dedicated to the Sebastoi, the emperors Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian in the year 89 or 90 AD. With each successive emperor, the expectation was that they would honor a city with their imperial temple that did not already have one to help spread imperial cult throughout the empire. However, Trajan broke the rule by honoring the city of Pergamum with a second imperial cult temple in 114 AD. This tells you how much Asia Minor was steeped in worship of the emperor. But in addition to those 4 official imperial cults approved by the Senate, any city could have a temple cult to the emperor that wanted to, and you could have as many as you wanted. And there are myriads of local imperial cult temples which did not require Senate approval, thriving in Asia Minor in the 1st century. That first imperial cult temple set the standard for having pagan temples dedicated to both the emperor and a pagan deity. Thus, pagan idolatry in Asia Minor was inextricably tied to the worship of the emperor. Octavian made arrangements with officials in Asia to dedicate the cult to the goddess Roma, the personified deity of the city of Rome, and the Emperor Augustus. Worship of the goddess Roma was particularly strong in Asia Minor. The earliest attested temple to Roma was dedicated in Smyrna in 195 BC. And most of the major cities, including all those addressed in Revelation, had cults to Dea Roma, or the goddess Roma. The first imperial cult built outside of Rome in 29 BC in Pergamum was dedicated to both Augustus and Dea Roma. No remains of that provincial temple in Pergamum have survived today, but numerous coins depict it. For example, a series of coins minted in 20 to 18 BC depict the Emperor Augustus on the obverse and the 6th column temple identified by the inscription. So you see Rome, and then et, which is Latin for and then August. And so this is Rome and Augustus. The coin names the donor of the temple, the commune, or the koinon, or the provincial council of Asia. An Asia tetradrachma, minted during the reign of Claudius, pictures the imperial cult temple with statues featuring Augustus in military uniform with spear in hand and the goddess Roma, her right hand raised to crown the victorious emperor, also built by the koinon of Asia. By dedicating the first imperial cult temple and successive temples to both the emperor and Dea Roma, these temples inextricably tied loyalty to Rome with support for the emperor. Coins were an important tool for the dissemination of imperial propaganda, and the emperors oversaw the messaging that was communicated through their coins. Because of this, scholar J. Rufus Fears suggests that coins are preferable over all other evidence to discern imperial ideology, because these sources, or other sources like literary accounts, are all secondary. Because coins were directly overseen by the emperors themselves, they give us first-hand knowledge about what the Roman government wanted its citizens and subjects to believe about them. It was advantageous for the emperors to have their portraits on the obverse of the coin and an image of a god or an imperial temple on the reverse. These symbols communicated that the Roman emperor was empowered by and acting on behalf of the gods, and in return, citizens were expected to participate in the imperial cult, worshiping the emperor as benefactor and savior. To live in the first century province of Asia Minor was to be inundated by images of Greco-Roman gods and the propaganda of the emperors. Temples dedicated to the gods and the emperors stood in all 7 cities addressed in Revelation. It is no wonder then that the oracles in chapters 2 and 3 indicate that the churches were being seduced by idolatry. It was a powerful and inescapable force of daily life in Asia Minor. With the imperial cult looming in the background, the task of the book of Revelation is to address this question: who really is Lord of this world? Imperial propaganda says it is unequivocally the emperor. John's vision demurs. The way that Revelation addresses these propagandistic images is actually to undress them. The third way that coins help us in reading Revelation is by illuminating the meaning of specific passages in the book of Revelation. And for the rest of my time, I'll only look at 3 tonight. First, after the book's introduction, readers encounter an exalted vision of the risen Christ in chapter 1, verses 12 to 16. The individual descriptions are largely drawn from the depictions of the one like a son of man and the Ancient of Days in Daniel 7, 9, and 10, Daniel 10, 2 through 9, and 15 to 17. However, the detail in verse 16a, that in his right hand he held 7 stars, is found nowhere in Daniel or the rest of the Old Testament. In the ancient world, 7 stars frequently symbolized 7 planets. Since the right hand connotes strength or authority, this image depicts the exalted Christ as holding power over the world in his right hand. Since this image does not occur in the book of Daniel, which is the source of his description, where does it come from? And why does John use it? A silver denarius minted during the reign of Domitian, possibly the very coin referenced in Revelation 6:6, depicts a previously deceased child of the Emperor Domitian as the god Apollo seated on a globe, the orbis terrarum, representing the world. By the way, Columbus did not discover that the world was round. This was known by Romans. Eratosthenes had calculated the circumference of the world centuries before Jesus was even born. So anyway, just let's bust that myth. Okay. All right. So here is the son of Domitian seated on the globe, the orbis terrarum, representing the world. The child with arms extended and facing to the right hand is surrounded by 7 stars, portraying the child as ruler of the world. The striking similarity between the depiction of Jesus and the divine son of Domitian led scholar Ernest Jansen to conclude in his aptly named article, "The Jesus of the Apocalypse Wears the Emperor's Clothes," that ancient coins such as this not only source material for the wording of John's counterclaims, but in part at least, the coins are the very cause of the ideological clash in the first place. The issues from the imperial mint were therefore an inevitable source upon which John needed to draw to make his polemic effective. The apocalypse is counter-propaganda, end quote. Revelation's vision undresses this ideology. It is not the imperial family of the Flavian dynasty holding the world in his right hand. It is the exalted Lord of Lords and King of Kings. The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of His Messiah, and He will reign forever and ever. Chapter 11, verse 15. Since this image occurs in the opening vision of Revelation, it signals to the audience that imperial ideology, such as that pictured on coins, will be a major target of what follows. Second, many readers have struggled to understand the two beasts of Revelation chapter 13. This is 666 and all that fun stuff. This chapter contains a direct and satirical attack on the imperial cult. Even in our own day, we are familiar with animal and human figures being represented in political cartoons. The United States is pictured as Uncle Sam, Democrats as donkeys, and Republicans as elephants. In his day, John saw a beast rising from the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, and on its horns were diadems. This grotesque 7-headed beast is described as being like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's. Its mouth was like a lion's mouth. Chapter 13:2. This outlandish beast is not a Johannine invention. Rather, it comes straight from Daniel chapter 7, where 4 beasts, a leopard, bear, lion, and 4th horrifying beast, symbolized 4 different kingdoms. But unlike Daniel, instead of representing several different kingdoms, Revelation's hideous beast represents one powerful and terrifying kingdom. The beast in Revelation, in other words, combines all 4 of the beasts from Daniel, enhancing its beastly character. Later in chapter 17, verse 9, John's vision will give us aid in identifying this hideous 7-headed beast by informing us that the 7 heads are 7 kings. The number 7 is frequently used in Revelation to symbolize completeness or wholeness, and the heads represent the imperial kings or rulers. Thus, the 7 heads are not meant to refer to 7 identifiable emperors, but are meant to symbolize the totality of imperial rule. Revelation 13 laments that the beastly kings were given authority over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all the inhabitants of the earth will worship this beast. This is describing what it would have felt like to live in Asia Minor. The whole world was worshiping the emperor. A second beast arises from the land in chapter 13, verse 11. And this beast exercises authority of the first beast on its behalf, and it makes the earth and all its inhabitants worship the first beast. The second beast makes images of the beast so that the people could worship the imperial beastly rulers. Officials in the Roman provinces minted their own coins promoting the imperial cult. For example, brass coins minted in the city of Pergamum depict the proconsul M. Plautius Silvanus facing the right hand, toe-gated, and being crowned by an unknown male figure in military dress. On the reverse, an imperial temple depicts a statue of Augustus in military dress, standing with spear in hand. Numerous local coinage such as this reminds us that the imperial cult did not function merely by imperial dictate. Rather, officials in the major cities of Asia Minor, including the ones addressed in Revelation, competed with one another about who could worship the emperor the best. The second beast is understood by most interpreters to refer to all those who made the imperial cult function in cities like Ephesus and Smyrna, such as M. Plautius Silvanus, but also including the social elites funding the erection of temples and statues, the provincial council of Asia, the imperial priesthood, and even local business leaders who promoted emperor worship. This second beast was given the power to kill those who refused to worship the imperial image in 1315. Perhaps then this second beast represents those throwing believers in Smyrna in prison and killing Antipas in Pergamum. Coins give us a first-hand glimpse into the kind of imperial ideology being satirically lampooned in Revelation 13. In 13:1, the vision describes the 7 imperial kingly heads as having blasphemous names along with diadems. And the legends on coins pictured around the portraits of crowned imperial heads give us plentiful examples of some of those blasphemous names. So on this coin, we have Divus Augustus, Divine Augustus. On this coin, we have Divine Augustus, who's the pater, the father of the nation. We have on many coins, you'll often see an abbreviation that says DF, which is Divi Filius, or son of a god, divine son, or son of a god. Also, many coins will have PM, Pontifex Maximus, High Priest. Many coins will also have autokrator or autokra for short for Almighty. And so these are some of the names, blasphemous names, that John has in mind when he writes this. Interestingly, the terms that John uses in Revelation 13, 14, and 16 for receiving a mark and the image of the beast, that word for mark, charagma, and the word for image, icon, are the technical terms that are used in the production of coins for the creating the emperor's image and his mark, or the titles for the emperor. In 13:4, the world worships the imperial beast because of its military victory. They ask, "Who is like the beast, and who can wage war against it?" Communicating imperial strength by depicting military victory was a primary purpose for coins. For example, a sestertius minted in 86 AD depicts the laureate head of Domitian on the obverse with the titles Imperator Caesar Domitian Augustus Germanicus, Consul for the 12th time, Censor in perpetuity, Father of the nation. On the reverse, the larger-than-life Emperor Domitian stands with laureate head over a cowering German captive bowing before him. The German captive presents his shield to the emperor in defeat. In 13:7, the imperial beast is given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. A sestertius minted by Vespasian in 71 AD celebrated the capture of Judea and the destruction of the Jewish temple at the end of the Jewish revolt in 70 AD. The obverse shows the portrait of Vespasian's laureled head, and on the reverse, the legend reads, Judea capta, or Judea conquered. On the left is either a captive bearded Jewish male or the victorious emperor, and on the right is a Jewish female seated with her head down in mourning, with military equipment lying around on the ground. Hearing that the beast wages war on the saints would also have certainly conjured up memories of the persecution of Christians under the Emperor Nero in Rome in 64 AD, after a fire burned down a large section of the city. To deflect rumors that Nero himself had started the fire, he blamed the Christian community, and the Roman historian Tacitus records that Nero arrested and brutally killed vast numbers of Christians. Some of them he covered with animal skins and fed to wild dogs, and others he fastened to crosses and lit them on fire to serve as lamps at night. It would not have been lost on the audience that Babylon, the great city of Rome, meets a fitting end by being burned, and the beastly emperors, Nero included, will meet their own end in a lake of fire. The mark of the beast is intelligible in this political satire. In John's vision, every person belongs to someone. They either have the name of God or the name of the beastly emperors on their foreheads or right hand. Receiving the symbolic mark of the beast in John's vision represents bowing the knee in worship to Caesar, something that the small and great, rich and poor, slave and free all seem to be doing in 13:16. In 13:16, a likely reason the beast's mark is not just placed on the forehead, but also on the right hand is because with the right hand that a person would hold a coin with the emperor's divine titles and likeness. And the reason this is interesting is because John, with this idea of being marked on the forehead, is actually drawing from Ezekiel chapter 9. But if you go look at Ezekiel 9, in Ezekiel 9, the mark only is received on the forehead. So in Revelation, it's adding the right hand. So why is it adding the right hand? And I think in Revelation 13, like the rest of Revelation, he's thinking about coins in a lot of what he's doing. And it's with the hand that you actually pay and use these coins with the emperor's divine titles and likeness. Thus, this is why the note that without the mark of the imperial beast in 13:17, no one can buy or sell in the marketplace. It becomes comprehensible. It would have been impossible for merchants to enter the international marketplace without handling the mark on money, since many Roman coins carried impressions alluding to the imperial cult. Revelation's satire undresses this ideology. Rather than the emperors being empowered by the gods as depicted on their coins, Revelation says they're empowered by Satan, the great dragon, the ancient serpent, the one who's called the devil, the deceiver of the whole world. The throne that Satan has set up on the earth for the worship of the emperors is a counterfeit throne. It's fake, It's a fraud. It's a poor imitation of the real throne upon which is seated God and the Lamb, around which the heavenly beings are worshiping now, beckoning the rest of creation to come and join. In later chapters, Revelation's vision shows that, like the dragon, the imperial beast is destined to be judged and destroyed. Thus, the emperors are not the invincible victors and saviors their coins proclaim them to be. Those who remain faithful to the Lamb, I think this is so beautiful. Those who remain faithful to the Lamb and are ostracized from buying and selling in the marketplace in 13:17 are assured in the next few verses that they have already been bought by the blood of the slain Lamb. Third and finally, so we're getting close to the end, you've almost made it. Third, Revelation 17 depicts the great city of Rome and her vast empire as a woman. This description immediately conjures up images of Dea Roma, the goddess symbolizing Rome. Roma commonly appeared on imperial coins. For example, in a denarius minted by the Emperor Galba, Roma is pictured on the reverse in military dress, holding a globe representing the earth with the goddess Nike, or victory, atop. In her left hand she holds a scepter with an eagle on the tip representing Roman victory. A silver coin minted by the Emperor Nero depicts a regal Roma, helmeted, enthroned in military dress. She holds Nike, or victory, in her right hand and a perizonium, or a triangular dagger, in her left hand. Taking cues from the prophets of Israel, John's vision satirizes the Roman Empire as a seductive, immoral, bloodthirsty harlot. In John's vision, the Roman Empire is pictured as a harlot who rides on the hideous seven-headed beast that we just looked at in chapter 13. This harlot goes by the name Babylon, and although John's vision borrows oracles against other evil nations besides Babylon from Israel's prophets, namely oracles against Tyre and Nineveh, Babylon is a fitting name for Rome. The Babylonians had destroyed Jerusalem and the first temple in the 6th century BC, and the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the second temple in 70 AD. The picture of Lady Babylon overseeing a vast seaborne commercial empire conforms well to the Roman Empire of the 1st century, where cities like Pergamum and Ephesus had major Roman harbors. The angel describes her as the great city that rules over the kings of the earth in 1718, and for anyone in the 1st century, this is an apt description of Rome. In Revelation 17, Babylon, the great city, is pictured as a prostitute, luring the kings of the earth with her seduction by getting the whole world drunk on her intoxicating wine. And Revelation 17:4 depicts her as clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her prostitution. The description of her opulent clothes matches exactly the list of luxury goods in 1816. They're also mentioned in 1812 in a list of 28 goods shipped around the Roman Empire via sea trade. She is a symbol of the luxuriousness and opulence offered in 1st century Roman Empire. In 1706, she is said to be drunk with the blood of saints and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus, referencing Roman persecution, conjuring back up Antipas from the city of Pergamum, who was martyred, and a group of martyrs slaughtered for the word of God and for the testimony, who are crying out below an altar in chapter 6, verse 9 and 10. In Revelation 17:5, this woman is seated on the seven-headed beast, which we've already seen represents the emperors. The fact that she rides on the seven-headed imperial beast demonstrates her alliance with it. The woman represents all facets of the Roman Empire, social, cultural, economic, religious, and political, that willingly cooperates with the beastly emperors. In 17:6 and 7, John is amazed when he sees the vision of the horrifying harlot riding on the beast with 7 heads. And the interpreting angel explains the mystery to John. In 17:9, the angel says, "This calls for a mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated." Rome was well known as the city set on 7 hills in John's world. Although the image is a bit confusing, the woman is seated on a 7-headed beast where the 7 heads represent 7 hills. The image could not be clearer thanks to a Sestertius minted in 71 AD in Asia Minor during the reign of Vespasian. The obverse depicts a portrait of Vespasian with the titles Emperor Caesar Vespasian Augustus, Pontifex Maximus, Tribunicia Potestas, Father of the Country, Consul for the third time. And the reverse depicts the goddess Roma in military dress, notice, seated on the 7 hills of Rome with a small sword in her right hand as a symbol of Roman might. Her foot stretches out over the Tiber River that flows in front of her. On the bottom left is the she-wolf suckling the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, representing the founding myth of Rome. John's vision appears to be interacting directly with this imperial image depicted on coins. As satirical counter-propaganda, Revelation's vision undresses this image for its Christian audience in Asia Minor. Rome, rather than being empowered by a benevolent goddess, is being run by a bloodthirsty harlot drunk on the blood of Christian martyrs. The 7 majestic hills on which she's seated are transformed into 7 monstrous heads of the satanic empowered beast. Instead of having a sword in her hand, she holds a chalice full of abominations and the blood of saints. This counter-propaganda allows for a voice from heaven to issue a call to the people of God in 18:4 and 5. Come out of her, my people, so that you do not take part in her sins, and so that you do not share in her plagues, for her sins are heaped as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquity. These Christians were being called not to fall prey to the deceptive lure of her luxury and opulence. In conclusion, you made it. Coins are an invaluable source for helping us read Revelation. We learn from the oracles to the 7 churches of Asia Minor that these Christians were being seduced by idolatry, complacent in the prosperity of first century provincial life in Asia, and experiencing conflict with outsiders, including from the Roman government. All 3 of these problems are readily understood against the background of the imperial cult in Asia Minor. These churches were tempted by idolatry, which in Asia Minor was inextricably linked to the imperial cult. They were facing pressure from their peers and local government officials to compromise, and in the face of such pressure, some Christians were apparently retreating from the faith for the ease of Roman life in provincial Asia. They were choosing Dea Roma, the great city, over the bride New Jerusalem, the holy city. The empire had a number of means to capture the hearts and minds of the people, and one of the most effective was through coins. Coins contain state-sponsored imperial propaganda, and as such, coins help us better understand the imperial ideology that Revelation refutes as counter-propaganda. Coins remind us that communication in the first century world was primarily done through images, and thus the incredible vision of Revelation is perfectly suited to be rhetorically effective to its original audiences. In some cases, Revelation may be responding directly to the messages communicated on certain coins. In response to these images, John boldly proclaims Jesus Christ as ruler of the kings of the earth in 1:4 and King of kings and Lord of lords in 19:16. This ends the nerdy part of the presentation, and now I just want to preach for just a second. I do not approach this lecture as a dispassionate, unbiased New Testament scholar. I unapologetically read Revelation as Christian Scripture, as saying something from God to us today. I read Revelation as employing a go and do likewise strategy. And I would consider it a shame if we left this lecture without a word from God. The centering vision of John's Revelation is the throne of God and the Lamb in Revelation 4 and 5. And as the centering vision, it is the bedrock image upon which all other images in the vision must interact. The followers of Jesus in all ages are beckoned by the living creatures and the hosts of heaven to have their lives intent on keeping focused on worshiping God and the Lamb on the throne in heaven, the true source of authority and power in this world. Revelation teaches us that imperial propaganda must be acknowledged and addressed because it fundamentally diverts hearts away from God's throne to earthly thrones, which Revelation warns are often co-opted by Satan. The message of Revelation, far from being a detailed prediction of end-time events, is a call to Christians to endure in faith, to resist compromising to earthly ideology. Rather than being an irrelevant book, Revelation may be the most relevant book for our cultural moment, as many in our churches have turned to a version of a Christianized Americanism in which politics and political platforms have too much sway over our loyalties. Nationalism clothed in religious garb may not feel idolatrous, but Revelation pulls back the curtain to say, the imperial beast may look like a lamb, but when it opens its mouth, it reveals its true character, satanic. Chapter 13, verse 11. The vision in Revelation is a sustained warning of imparting the sacred to secular power, military, political, or economic. In the words of Michael Gorman, I want to read this quote. It is important to stress again that Revelation does not call for the wholesale rejection of culture and of engagement with the world. Rather, it calls for discernment. It is one thing, in other words, to live in an empire or superpower, to live in the shadow of the beast, trying to avoid participating in the evils of idolatry while bearing witness to another empire, the kingdom of God, and thereby working for the good of the world as salt and light. It is quite another to unconditionally endorse that empire or any culture, or to sacralize it. Yet that is what many Christians and churches have done. They've baptized their country and or culture into the name of the triune God of political, economic, and military power, wrongly thinking that this is the power of God." End quote. The people of the victorious Lamb ought to be the first ones to recognize and critique governments and politicians of our world when they step outside of their boundaries and encroach on what rightfully only belongs to God. Even if prophetically calling out such encroachments leads to social ostracization within the religious community or from the government. We must do this so that the church can go forward in her mission of calling the world to allegiance to the victorious Lamb. Revelation has an important role in the canon of Scripture. It is a training manual for recognizing the images of empire for what they are, critiquing them, and resisting their allure. So how does Revelation suggest we train to do this? The answer is clear: through worship. Christian worship is an inherently political act because in worship we reaffirm our loyalty to God over all other loyalties. We gather every week with other believers as a corporate body to declare that we will bow to no other kings or gods but God and the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. In worship, we read from God's authoritative Scripture. We speak to God and He speaks to us. We commune with the risen and victorious Lord. And in our preaching, we prophetically critique the idolatries of this world and call ourselves to faithfulness to the good news that God's Spirit has anointed Jesus Christ as King. Compromise with cultural claims of the lordship of Caesar or the divinity of Roma have no place in the Christian's life. And John poses a stark series of alternatives to Christian churches 2,000 years ago. Who will receive their worship? The rightful ruler of the world, God and the exalted Lamb, or the satanic empowered beastly rulers? Will they see the imperial cult for what it really is, a tool of Satan's deception which is doomed for destruction? Will they choose to whore after Rome's oppressive political and economic systems? Or will they live for the heavenly New Jerusalem, the bride adorned for the Lamb? The decision was theirs, and the decision is ours. Thank you.
Okay, before we let him sit down, are there any questions? Have we got one already?
Okay, on some of the coins, you had an S over here and a C over here.
Senatus Consulto, that is Senatus Consulto, which is the stamp saying Senate approved. So the Senate has approved this message, basically. Yes?
Yeah, back in those days, what do we know about how well contemporary Christians understood Revelation? Was it much easier for them than it has been for us?
Sure. Yeah. One of the examples I give is that we have at least over 24 apocalyptic works that have survived from 200 BC to 200 AD to us today. And so people were much more adept at reading apocalyptic symbolism. I mean, even if we think about the texts in our own scriptures, we have apocalyptic sections in the book of Daniel. We have the apocalyptic sections in the Gospels, in the Synoptic Gospels, in Matthew 24 and Luke 21 and Mark 13, which is very similar to apocalyptic imagery. And so first century people were just much more adept at reading apocalyptic imagery than we are. And that's why I tried to show those coins with all those symbols on it, right? They're just better at hearing symbols and knowing what these symbols mean. And this is not something we're accustomed to doing, so it's really what gives us fits when it comes to the book of Revelation. Does that help?
Are these coins found worldwide or primarily in Turkey?
Some of them that's why I tried to emphasize Domitian a lot on the coins. I wanted to try to, that's when most scholars believe Revelation was written. It's when I would date Revelation as well. So I tried to focus on Nero, Vespasian, and Domitian. I tried to emphasize coins that were minted in Asia, but even coins that would have been minted in Rome, you have this vast system of commerce like we saw, where they're on the sea all the time, and so there's going to be a pretty wide exchange of coins. And these images occur over and over and over again, so even though an image occurs on a coin in the reign of Augustus, it'll pop up on somebody else's coin. So there's kind of a standard set of images that you just begin to see. And some of them are minted in Asia, some of them are minted in Rome, but they have such a wide spread that I think people in these churches would have been familiar with those images. Yeah.
The world back then did not significant the world of today. The world consisted of what the empire called the world.
Sure.
So that was Asia Minor, all over in Roma and Gaul and all those other places. So when we read the word world, we can't put our world in that picture.
Yeah.
Because that was the world to them.
Yeah.
Can you confirm that Laodicea was destroyed by an earthquake in 62 AD?
Yes, it was, and actually the emperor offered to give them a break in taxes, and the Laodiceans actually responded back to the emperor, "We don't need you to do that, we're good to go," which is exactly what you see confirmed in the oracle against the Laodiceans, "I'm rich, I've prospered, I'm in need of nothing." That phrase, "I'm in need of nothing," is probably actually a quote of what the Laodiceans had said to the emperor. They didn't even take the tax break that was being offered to them.
The reason I mention that is, I may be wrong in my thinking now from what you just said, but Laodicea was a very prosperous city, but in 62 AD it would have been a rock pile.
Yeah.
It would have been in rubble. It
Yes.
would have taken years to
Yes.
recover from that,
Yes.
which would date Revelation later in the first century.
Yeah, so I do it. I have a footnote in here that I date it sometime in the reign of Domitian, so towards the end, the second half of the first century. So you're right that there is the earthquake, and you do need time to get back to where they can be in a position to say, "I've prospered, I have need of nothing." So yeah, there's lots of little things like
We
that.
never found the letter to Laodicea either.
Right,
Because it's mentioned in Scripture, but no one's ever found it.
right, unless it's Ephesians. Unless it's Ephesians. There are some scholars that argue that the letter to the Laodiceans is actually the letter to the Ephesians. But yeah.
Your thesis begs the question,
Yes.
if the symbols on Roman coins had been different, would the symbolism in the book of Revelation have been different?
I think it would have, because I think Revelation is addressing, the vision is given, and even in John has to think about what he's seeing. I mean, even when he's describing what he's seeing, he's saying, "It was like, it was like, it was like." And so as John's struggling to depict what he has seen, he has to use images that are common to him and the people that he's writing to. And so he is bringing to bear, and his major source of images, his primary source of images is the Old Testament, clearly. But this is also secondary, and there are some scholars, and I'm almost there, I'm pretty much there, that think that some of these things, they're too close. When he says the woman who's seated on 7 hills, and that's such a weird imagery, right? Because he has to say the 7 heads of the 7 beasts are 7 hills. Like, that's a weird description. That's too weird to not be actually interacting with that image on that coin. The same with the seven stars in the right hand. I think if the image was different on the coins, that image would be different as well.
It's ubiquitous symbolism too, because everybody would have access to coins,
Yes, absolutely.
as opposed to some other physical manifestation
Absolutely.
of these images in a place that where maybe somebody doesn't have any contact with that. billboard in the wrong place.
Absolutely. Coins are billboards. Yeah, coins are the billboards of the first century. Yeah.
But it's just like our coins and our dollar bills. They all got symbolism on it.
Yes.
Each verse, you know.
Yes.
And then if you look at In God We Trust, and then if you look on a dollar bill, you got the pyramids with the eye over it, the overseeing eye.
Yeah.
So we all got symbols on
I mean, my comment to that would be, I'm not impacted by the symbolism on our coins, I think in the same way that first century people were. I'm not sure we spend a lot of time looking at them. The other thing is our coins tend to be pretty similar over a long distance, over long periods, whereas each new emperor has multiple mints in his name that he oversees, and so coins in the ancient world were always changing, and there was always something new to see with every new coin that you handle.
Is there any book in the bookstore that kind of covers this information?
No.
He's right.
This research actually grows out of a book proposal that I'm trying to put together, because I think this is such a... I think people that struggle to read Revelation, the reason they apply it to our day is because they don't have some handle that helps them see the ancient world. And to me, this helps you see. And I think you can go through every chapter. Like when we go through chapters 4 and 5 and see that centering vision of the throne, all you got to do is show a couple of coins of the emperors on their thrones, and you see how what Revelation is doing is speaking into that ideology.
Christ used a denarius when the Pharisees were trying to trap him.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying, should we pay taxes to Caesar?
Yes.
And Christ asked for a coin.
Yes.
They gave him a denarius.
Yes.
And it would have had, I think probably someplace between Nero and Tiberius, would have had that Caesar's face on it. And he said, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and give to God what's God's.
Yeah.
They were trying to trap him, and because if he'd have said, don't pay to Caesar, they'd have said, you're an enemy to Rome. And if he'd have said, give it to God, they'd have said, again, you're an enemy to Rome if we're to give our money to God instead of the...
And if I could press your observation a little bit further, Jesus actually says whose image and whose inscription is on the coin. So Jesus actually points to both the legend and the actual icon on the coin. So this is other confirmation that Christians themselves, in their own traditions of Jesus, are interested in what's going on with the ideology of coins. Tim?
This is just sideline. The coins you showed, are they all the same size?
For the most part,
What size is it?
I don't know about that big. I don't know.
A quarter, a half dollar?
About a quarter, yeah. And actually,
Some seem very detailed.
yes. Oh, they do.
Words on one side.
Yes. I actually went down to our collection. I looked back at the collection guide. We have a coin during the period of Nero. We have a coin during the period of Domitian. We have a coin during the period of Augustus. And so these are some of the periods and coins we've looked at. This is the really stinky thing about displaying coins in our museum, is that unless you have two, you only get to display one side. And I even tried to get behind our displays to see the back, and you can't. And so I think, and this is just me, but I think the head side, the obverse, is the most boring side, because that's just Domitian. It would be interesting to see what was on the reverse, and I don't know that for the coins that we have in our collection.
It's all
And
got
so,
standing up in the mirror.
what'd you say?
Some museums standing.
Yes, I wish we had maybe that. Maybe we could try that. But so I don't even know what's on the reverse of the coins we have in the collection downstairs. But
And last question, Ramona, right here in front.
So in your book, you'll have lots of pictures of the coins, right?
yes, and I should mention that one of the best places to go and find most of these is on the British Museum website. Their collection is really extensive, and that's where almost all the images, and they are very kind in sharing these images and letting them be used, or else maybe I had to pay for tonight unless y'all turned me in and got me arrested or something. But you can go on the British Museum website and see lots of these coins. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Let's give them one more round of applause.